Chapter 11. Now that we're approaching the climax of the story, I've been instructed to cut the silly chit-chat, no more talk about toilet breaks and sparkling Simure, no more editorial ad-libs, as it were, no more telling you about the scandals that happened in Cannes, or the fact that we should far better have trusted Luke Hutchins, our crooked literary agent, with the photocopies of my penis than the ones of the vicar's business plan. My lips are sealed. I hereby promise to avoid any further unnecessary deviations, hesitations, repetitions. Except a quick one, perhaps, about the night before Billy G's concert, as is indelibly etched on my forgettery. I couldn't sleep because of this sense of impending doom. After all, it could hardly be a coincidence that Emma had followed Billy G to Japan. Emma was here for a purpose, and we hadn't even succeeded in changing our vulnerable radio mic system. Over breakfast, I tried to persuade the vicar that he must do something rather than sleepwalking his way to disaster. "You're like that emperor fiddling while Rome burned," I said.
"Yehudi Menuhin. Now that is serious,"
he replied. The jet lag had not dampened his sense of humour, nor his appetite, as he was working his way through the largest English cooked breakfast I had ever seen, carefully pushing the bacon and sausage to one side as if touching repugnant life forms.
"Even the working classes are allowed to eat, you know," he said when he saw me looking. "They serve you over there. It is all or nothing, no vegetarian options."
"I'm far too nervous to have any appetite," I said. "You must do something about these radio microphones. Persuade Billy G not to use one."
"Would that not be rather like giving in to terrorists? We English do not do things like that. We march slowly towards the guns, dressed in all our finery."
He paused to eat a mouthful of scrambled egg, carefully wiping his mouth with his napkin before continuing.
"It would not help anyway, trust me. There is nothing to worry about. Buy yourself a coffee and calm down."
"Personally, I'm terrified," I confessed, and I certainly wasn't going to buy a drink. I'd made that mistake the night before, and my cup of coffee had cost me more than I bet Hugh Grant paid for the full shebang with Divine Brown, including a tip. I went and parked my bottom on the top of the dwarf wall that separated the cafe from the rest of the lobby. It wasn't all doom and gloom. There was this great moment when the vicar was spotted by a young Japanese man with a camera who went over to speak to him. I'd seen the same man at the production meeting, a journalist, I think, writing a diary of the tour. Regular vicar watchers will know how such encounters usually go. First, the vicar hides his face with his hand and turns away when accosted by the unwanted intrusion. When that fails, as it did here, you don't need to hear a word of the conversation to know that it will go roughly as follows. The man asks if he can ask a question, and the vicar replies,
"If it is the right question."
The poor man then proceeds with his questions, at which point the vicar says,
"That is 2 questions, pick one."
The man tries to re-ask the question, at which point the vicar cuts in,
"The quick answer is yes,
or sometimes
no,"
before returning to his Financial Times and completely ignoring further questions. Vintage vicar, completely unhelpful and totally infuriating. I was still chuckling at this display when the vicar was joined by Kevin. This brought back all my fears. It was a conversation I desperately wanted to hear, but I fear even the eavesdropping skills of GCHQ might have struggled. They were too far away to hear what was being said, and I don't speak body language, or body odour maybe. Sorry, I promised to cut the crap jokes. The vicar was his usual assured self and was quizzing Kevin about something. I couldn't see Kevin's face clearly, but he looked fairly shocked by whatever the vicar had said. It would almost have been worth the price of another cup of coffee to know what they were talking about, but I could hardly go and plonk myself beside them, and I still think that Hugh Grant got better value for money. I was so engrossed with watching the pair of them that I didn't notice Gabriel sitting down beside me. "So, Kevin showed up then," he observed, following the direction of my gaze. "Yeah, I'd love to know what the vicar's saying to him. I trust he's blackmailing his sorry arse so that he behaves himself this evening, although he's convinced that Kevin's not a threat as he'll be on stage the whole time." "You worry too much," Gabriel said. "Look at the vicar, he's relaxed. It's hardly your problem anyway. You're just a hired hand." I felt quite insulted. "I have this horrible feeling that we should have done more," I said, stressing the we. "Well, it's too late now. Here comes Tetsu." I looked round to the hotel entrance to see Tetsu prompt to the second, ready to whisk us off to the venue. I'd been given a schedule for the day. Sound check, 2 o'clock. Doors open at 5:30, and showtime at 6:30. It seemed absurdly early, but apparently it's normal for Japan.
"In order to save on travelling, concerts happen straight after work before people leave the city to go home," the vicar explained. "There is a strict curfew at 9 o'clock, by which time the building must be empty. You watch at the end of the concert. It is an impressive sight. The audience will barely have left before a large squad of roadies will appear as if by magic, and the whole PA will be dismantled in the time it would take a Western roadie to pull his trousers up and put his gloves on." He smiled at me knowingly. The truth is, of course, that the Japanese have to finish the concert early so that they can all go out plastic food shopping afterwards. A joke that went straight over my very small, mostly empty head. Though I must insist that you take a walk around the backstreet restaurants that lurk underneath the raised railways and tram lines. The plastic food displays that they have in their windows are fascinating. There is an entire industry in Japan devoted to nothing other than the production of plastic food. No doubt there is a ministry of plastic food, ensuring that no restaurant puts posh food in their windows while serving mouldy offerings inside, or vice versa. It is one of those sights of Tokyo. To miss it would be rather like having a weekend in Paris without a French kiss, although I would of course advise against actually eating in any of the restaurants. Such flippant talk seemed wholly inappropriate to me. I kept wondering if I should perhaps go over the vicar's head and warn Breamore how lightly he was taking the dangers of the concert.
You're still not a happy bunny, are you?
He asked as we drove towards the venue. Too right, I thought.
Then perhaps we should get you and Gabriel to mount a guard over the stage. It will serve no useful purpose, but I can see it will make you happier. I suggest you position yourself on the gantry on stage right, above the monitor mixing desk, and Gabriel does the same on stage left, where he can keep an eye on the microphone receivers. Is there anything else?
I mentioned the fact that a friend of the vicar's had asked if they could meet him after the show. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them.
You know my feelings on this subject exactly and precisely.
He looked at me.
So why would Punk do exactly and precisely what I have exactly and precisely asked him not to do? You know that I see no visitors before or after a show, unless I find my feet walking towards them.
He sat back in his chair, half joking, half serious.
So I must ask myself why Punk has deliberately chosen to disregard my wishes. That is an interesting one.
The cloud of my gaff hung over us all the way to the venue, where I was able to hide myself away in the gantry as the vicar had suggested. I moved into position as soon as we arrived at the venue and, with the exception of the odd toilet break, my bladder has the capacity of an egg cup. I stayed there until the end of the concert. I, at least, was taking my responsibilities very seriously. That boy's not cool. He's got ears the size of diamonds, broken nose and a twisted face, with a voice that They didn't even bother getting to the end of the track. Billie G waved her arms like someone flagging down a car and the song petered out.
Okay, save it for tonight. It don't pay to come too soon. Not that any of you guys would understand that.
My God, she yelled. Just where do you get off? Thank you so much for the insult. If you were a burglar in my house, I would happily grab a kitchen knife and hack you into little pieces and then feed you to the cat. I'm looking
for Kevin. I know.